I will not follow you. He has already forgiven me, and I have no intention of letting him down again. Love in humans exists. I am not entirely better than them. I, too, have sinned, and my job is to stop people from this mistake. We created this world so that they could become positive. Hearing this, Mirantikan went berserk. So you will regret that you want to continue serving them. You will regret not having died that day. Davy will never see you again. I will tear your body apart and I will see if there is really some wretched light in your heart. We'll see if you're really as divine as you think you are. When he said this, he emerged from the shadows, revealing his masked face. Malchadil began to protect himself from the rapid cuts of Mirantikan, who was swinging his sword in a wild frenzy. The black blade wounded a warrior after a while, tearing his shirt apart. You're a real fool. Do you really think you're going to change something? This little puppy belongs to me, and just like the others, he will be killed. Mirantikan began to scream, seeing that his opponent no longer had the strength to fight him. Give up, he screamed after a while. Never. Hearing this, the masked ruler stretched out his hand in front of him. So die, light-eyed punk. After a while, a black glow erupted from his hand, which it terrorized, knocking him off his feet. Suddenly, a mysterious power began to burst the suffocating man against the walls, and Mirantikan laughed, grabbing his sword. Before I will open you, let me let your comrades look at it. Davy will have something to remember when he finally wakes up from this funny dream. When he said this, he threw the warrior on the ground and looked behind him, into the darkness. Suddenly, he raised his hands up, uttering some quiet, mysterious words. When he stopped saying the spell, strange voices began to come from the depths of the sewage, and the dung-dense water began to bubble, floating upwards. The Pagungurian, still lying on the ground, began to laugh, seeing how slowly yelling creatures began to form from mud and silt. Dozens of disgusting creatures took on more and more natural shapes with each passing moment, and the dirt began to turn into crusted over, brown-grey skin. Nanthonin looked helplessly at the disgusting monsters, which looked like clay creatures. However, they had no eyes, and the only thing on their faces were open, smelly throats, from which wild noises came out, resembling a kind of crow screech, mixed with a pig's squeak. Find them, Mirantikan suddenly said to his creatures. The blind monsters squealed at the same time, as if pleased, immediately understanding the command of their lord, and then rushed to run with their snouts near the ground, sniffing. After a while, the monsters sniffed out something, and when they turned into a dead end, they moved towards the ladder leading to the top. Nanthonin tried to rise from the ground, hearing the monsters begin to knock into the closed hatch, but Mirantikan after a while grabbed his hair and began to drag him behind him. Tie his hands and follow me. You will help me get these people. The evil ruler turned to his servant. With great pleasure, my lord, laughed the Pagungurian again. His blue eyes suddenly turned into tar-black eyes. Only this fair-haired boy and my old servant Tirathdin leave for me. I will deal with them with my own hands, Mirantikan added. Pupin jumped violently from the ground, and then ran into David lying next to him. What's going on? Cordrin asked. Have you heard that? Jolifessa looked at the halflings anxiously and came closer to the bars, beginning to listen. I'm not hearing anything yet, but we're definitely not safe. Sooner or later someone will find us. We have to go from here, said the princess. But how? The whole port is teeming with wormers. We will not be able to escape. Besides, we have to wait for Nanthonin, said Nethin, glancing every now and then through a narrow gap, seeing the monsters walking on ships. What if something happened to him? What if this fanatic did him? David did not finish, because a sound appeared in the corridor again. This time everyone heard it, and it was much louder than the previous one. Jolifessa once again approached the bars, looking down where the sewage was. I can't see anything. We need to go better, she said. Or maybe Nanthonin is climbing to us? Maybe he cannot get and he need to open the hatch, Terhin said. Nope. It's definitely not him. Surely he would give us a sign, or at least he would call out to us. We can't open. After all, he himself told us to run away and find a safe place, and soon the sun would set and we would finally have to get out of here before it got dangerous. The girl replied. Are you saying that it's better to get out of here in day or night? Celian asked. I don't know. In my opinion, in the high tide we would have a better chance, but these monsters should still be the same in the port. Until we are here, they will never leave here, she replied. My daughter is right. In the port there is a canal leading to the north, serving as a trade route, but in the south flows the river Indurdor. There is a gate that we could enter there, but these monsters are definitely already there, King Hurin said sadly. The others who heard this froze in silence, but after a while, they heard a mysterious knock again, bouncing loudly from the iron bars. I really don't like it. Let's think first about how we can escape from this city, Pupping said. Right. You have to come up with a plan before someone will. Jolifessa did not finish, hearing clearly that the crackling is getting louder and louder, so she went behind bars again, wanting to see what was happening. I don't know what it is, we'd better hurry, and her words suddenly turned into a monstrous scream, when suddenly a disgusting monster jumped out of the shadows, which jumped upstairs and clung to the bars. A crusted overhand grabbed her mantle, pulling the girl closer to himself. Mettens, who was closest to the princess, slammed the creature straight into the eyeless face, but he did only a little without his weapon. The beast produced only an indescribable yelp, which was also accompanied by David's terrified squeak. Suddenly, the creature grabbed the girl tighter, trying to bite her, but after a while Bago grabbed its fossilized head and began to slam against one of the bars. However, the creature did not feel any pain, so it threw itself further at its victim. Nethin decided to help Mudman stop the creature, but when the young man thought that the monster had finally let go, it bit him right in the right wrist. Nethin jumped back, hissing in pain, then looked at his bite mark. He immediately knew that there was something extremely wrong with the wound, because after a while the blood took on a grayish tint, and a terrible burning sensation spread over his skin. What is it? David kept screaming, seeing as the only one the wounded friend, twisting the bite mark with a leather belt. Kill it, shouted terrified Ter into the muddy. Finally, Tereferdin handed Bago his stick, and the skinny man in a few moments finally freed the princess from its hardened paws, smashing the creature's hands into tiny pieces. The crusted body sprinkled on the ground, after which it began to jump. Small, moving pebbles were just below the feet of a squeaking David, who began to trample it to dust. Now everyone knew that these were not jokes. This creature was not any disgusting, living monster, but a simple pile of fossil that could not simply be killed. This creature was not, after all, alive, but only activated by magic. We have to get out of here as soon as possible. We will not be able to defeat these monsters, Pupping cried out suddenly. Hearing this, David immediately jumped out of his seat. Suddenly, several more creatures stuck to the bars, which began to tug at them, trying to get to the 13 escapees. One of the monsters suddenly pulled out the first one out of the bars. The team, knowing full well that they would do nothing to them, ran to the barricaded fence, brushing away the garbage to get through the narrow gap to the huge port. The grumpy creatures were still tugging behind bars, so hard that their fossilized paws simply began to crack. As soon as Bago came out of hiding place as first, a terrifying sight immediately appeared before his eyes. Goblins and wormers were literally everywhere. Not only that, after a while, the creatures standing in the nearest surrounding, noticed the fleeing fugitives and began to shoot at them with bows. Fortunately, Bago had already prepared for such a circumstance and deflected several arrows with his makeshift shield, which was several boards tied down to each other. That way, cried the princess, leading her companions towards the great pier. When they were on it, other monsters suddenly jumped out of some ships to surprise the arsonists, but Jolifessa quickly dealt with them, knocking them to the ground, and all the others trampled monsters, which fell with a cry of pain into the great canal. The girl grabbed goblin swords lying on the ground, and then killed 2 more opponents, jumping on one of the boats. Do not stop, to that boat, quickly, she cried, then jumped back on the pier, running towards the sailboat at the very end. The girl smiled in her mind, seeing that their goal was already so close. In addition, some of the goblins standing on neighboring boats stared at the escapees helplessly, afraid to jump into the water they hated. One of the creatures, braver or dumber, was not going to give up, and jumped out of the boat into the water, immediately bitterly regretting it. The grey skin began to peel off from his body, and a terrible waste came out of his mouth. All the team ran faster and faster, seeing that they would soon be able to escape, but suddenly David's head was spinning again, and the boy tripped over the rope lying on the ground, falling limply on the boards. Held by the muddy king, fortunately noticed the boy lying behind and ordered the skinny man to turn back. Put me down and take the boy, I'll do it on my own, said the ruler. Bago obediently obeyed the order and then ran to the paralyzed David. Nathan jumped first into the boat, and after him Tahin. "Fast, they are running here," called out Jolifesa, pointing to the approaching cord. In the company of a dozen mysterious fossils, Bago finally picked up David from the ground, and when he did it, several goblin arrows flashed right next to his head. "Jump in, quickly," the girl shouted to the other comrades, throwing her father on a board. "But what about Nanthonin?" Jelif asked. The princess answered nothing, and there was a clear anxiety in her eyes. Celian began shooting at the chasing them monsters with a Vermirion bow, but he still couldn't do much when dealing with hundreds of these creatures. When Bago was finally close, Pupin and Cordrin breathed a sigh of relief and jumped on board, but Jolifesa twitched suddenly, seeing something disturbing just behind the mudman running behind them, namely, it was a shade of purple. "Bago, watch out," she cried, but the figure hiding among the creatures stood only in one place, not caring too much about her screaming, raised his hands upwards. Suddenly, the masked man roared furiously, picking up his sword in front of him. When he did it, some enormous force spread throughout the environment, spreading an indescribable bang behind them. Muddy and David fell on the boards, knocked off their feet by this mysterious power, and the moored boat in front of them tilted dangerously to the side. Terrified Celian, knocked down by the blast, he fell into the water, catching the side of the boat at the last second. Suddenly, he noticed that the rope attached to the pier would not stand right away, and the boat would sail away without the others. I see that it was not so easy to stop you human curs." Mirentagan laughed suddenly. After a while, it was joined by another familiar laugh. The golden-haired Pagurian looked out from behind his ruler's back, opening his black, amused eyes. "Wait, what did you do with Nanthonin?" Tirethidin screamed furiously. "Oh, it's you Tirethidin again. Fortunately, your dear friend is alive, so far." When Mirentagan uttered these last words, he nodded to his army, and several monsters fell out of the crowd, holding in their paws a battered, chained warrior. His face was completely soaked in sweat and blood, and all his fingers were stripped of their nails. Pupin roared furiously, seeing this terrible sight, wanting to get out of the boat, but Cordrin stopped him with a firm no. "As chance would have it that I have come here for all of you." The evil ruler began to speak again, stopping his gaze on the tortured face of Hero Est. "I wanted you to share the miserable fate of your friend for the way you treated me in the old mine at the time, but I thought it didn't make sense. I don't care about your king anymore. You can take him, I'll let you get out of here." Hearing this, the team froze in silence, except to someone, finished after a while amused Mirentagan, suddenly snatching the paralyzed David from the hands of Mudman. Bago wanted to stop him and grab the masked man by the leg, but the man began to kick the skinny Muddy furiously in the face. "No!" Bago howled in horror, seeing Mirentagan pulling a mysterious gold medallion from the boy's pocket, lifting it out in front of him. "Come to me Tirethidin. Again, I can give you solace. You don't have to go with them. I will never come back to you. I'd rather die. Take me instead of the boy," replied the beautiful-haired man. "Oh, how cute. Unfortunately, however, it so happens that I have come here for both of you, and I will not part with any of you." Mirentagan snorted. "You better keep quiet, you devil," Jolifesa screamed, and no longer completely controlling herself, she grabbed her spear. Fortunately, Jelif stopped her as soon as possible, knowing that it would only make their current situation even worse. "A foolish little girl, I want to take only these 3 people with me, and I will let the others go. You don't have to resist me," Mirentagan said. "I'm not going to leave any of my friends with you, maggot. I'll murder you," the girl replied, trying to pick up her weapon, but in some unexplained way, she did not have the strength to do it. "Do you really think that the power of your hands will do anything against my power?" asked the evil ruler, and then he waved his hand, whipping her spear from her hands, with his mysterious power. The princess, who saw this, swallowed only her saliva. She already knew that she could not save her comrades. Mirentagan began to laugh, seeing her helplessness. "How sad it is. I can clearly feel your fear, little princess. I sense clearly your weakness and powerlessness. I'm so sorry that you can't do anything." Hearing this, a battered Nanthonin looked at David lying next to him. The Pagurian grabbed Tirethidin after a while rapidly, and he also threw him to the ground, directly under the feet of the masked man, where the warrior and David were also kneeling. "Tell me what you want from us, you monster. I no longer belong to your order." Kill me if you want as soon as possible and leave the others alone, screamed Green-Eyed Man. I don't have to kill you, I'm a merciful ruler and I don't want to hurt anyone. Well, maybe, besides your light-eyed companion, but I will leave the boy specially for you, Mirantican replied ominously. Wait. What is this supposed to mean? What do you mean? Tirefadin was concerned and terrified. Don't worry, you won't see anything. All you have to do is complete the unfulfilled task I once entrusted to you. When the others said so, the Pagungerian with wild laughter stepped on Tirefadin so that he could not move, and Mirantican himself grabbed him by the long hair, raising his head, and then put a mysterious gold medallion under his nose. A hand with an engraved eye, hung on a gold chain, began to sway slightly in the wind, in front of the face of Tirefadin, screaming in despair. His beautiful eyes began to become more and more dark, but the beautiful-haired man still struggled to oppose his former lord. Do not be afraid, my servant, the Lord of Light has already forgiven you for your sins, Mirantican said to the sobbing man. Terrified Bago tried to get to his 3 companions, but some inconceivable power did not allow him to do so. All who were next to the moored boat could only look helplessly, feeling clearly as if some invisible wall was separating them more and more from the 3 unfortunate people with each passing moment. Meanwhile, Nanthorin looked up at the sobbing, paralyzed David, who had apparently already come to terms with his fate. Don't be afraid, you can't give up, you are our only hope, he whispered. The fading light in the warrior's eyes suddenly went out, but the boy's eyes suddenly became penetrated by a golden glow. Nanthorin gave him all his last strength, and then slumped limply to the ground. Chapter 44. Oh. I see that someone here is not doing well. What a funny sight. You have all fallen into my snare. I have been waiting for this moment to appear to you. Did you really think I wouldn't come back to you? Mirantican began to laugh, seeing a warrior lying on the ground. I just hope you haven't died, Litter. I was going to stab you in the heart with my own hands and open your wretched soul. When he said this, he left the possessed Tirefadin, approaching the half-alive heroist to check his condition. With a strong kick, he knocked his body to the side to see if he was breathing. Oh, I see that you are still living, you waste. This is good when you can suffer for a while. Mirantican interrupted his speech for a moment, pulling out his knife. Tirefadin, don't kill the boy yet. Let him look before he dies, he finished after a while, but strangely he did not hear any answer. Surprised, he looked away, and a disturbing sight appeared to his eyes. Rising from the ground, David balled his fists, and then he opened his brightening eyes. Don't you wish, demon? I will no longer surrender to your strength. It's time to say no to you. When the boy said this, he snatched Tirefadin from the hands of Pagungerian, and his eyes again took on a beautiful, green color. The Black Knight stared at it with dullness, then found that his amulet would also disappear from his hands. Frightened, he retreated backwards, and Mirantican looked furiously at the fair-haired boy. Who do you think you are, a little one at all? A hero? Do you think you're going to get something in now? I am your lord. He screamed. No, replied the boy, grabbing his sword. So you resist me? Yes, then I'll stop playing with you eventually. If you really think you can stop me, let's find out for ourselves. Mirantican also lifted his sword, and then lifted Nanthorin from the ground with his other hand, throwing him under the boy's feet. We'll see if you're really strong enough, my little boy, to stand up to me. Hearing this, David clenched his fists harder. You will see the devil our strength, not mine. We will kill you, cowardly beast, replied the young man, and then he threw himself with Tirefadin at Mirantican. The others, seeing their furious companions, suddenly felt that a mysterious power was no longer holding them back, and their hearts were filled with hope again. Bago jumped to the screaming Pagungerian, stunning him with his big paw, and Poppin, standing behind him, jumped straight at Mirantican, driving his knife into the opponent's unshielded armpit. However, the evil ruler did not bleed at all and threw off the angry halfling from himself. So you're so repaying me in this way? You are fools if you choose death, howled Mirantican, lifting his sword over the head of the lying Nanthorin. Jalafessa, seeing the endangered warrior, thrived her spear straight into the silver face of the dark ruler, but as soon as the blade dived into his forehead, it did not impress him at all. Do you really think I can be killed? I am the lord of this world. I decide who will die today, that is, all of you, human beings, Kyrian hounds. Kill them, Saturate yourselves and drink and eat their bodies, on them. Mirentagan gave the order to his creatures. After a while, the wild creatures doused 14 escapees from all sides like a living water. One of the fossilized creatures tried to bite Celian, but nothing stroked its crusted head. Although all the defending arsonists seemed nothing compared to a large bunch of monsters, Mirentagan was horrified to see them killing all the monsters. Stone particles began to jump up, and after a while nothing remained of the ugly fossils but only a pile of rubble. Mirentagan, however, having on his side still numerous battalion of wormers and goblins, did not intend to give up. When he saw that the team of these escapees also began to grind the next monsters to pieces, he finally went into a real frenzy. Enough is enough. I will deal with you myself. You're about to know what my anger is, he roared. And you will see what our anger is, David replied. Hearing this, the masked man, he answered nothing, but he stretched out his sword again in front of them. After a while, he lifted it up, uttering some loud spell. Kanhanali Mirenthiel Alhi. Suddenly, a purple flame burst out of his weapon, which stopped right next to the terrified fugitives, suddenly transforming into a mysterious vortex. The portal began to suck everything around, including the squealing monsters that came closest to the mysterious vortex. Mettens was suddenly knocked off his feet, then screamed, seeing that he was about to be sucked in by this terrible something, but Jelif, lying next to him, grabbed his legs at the last moment, struggling to stay on the shaking boards. After a while, the whole pier began to shake, and all the escapees were forced to catch something to protect themselves from a real hurricane. David knew he couldn't take any chances, because as soon as he got up, the vortex pulled him in like a vacuum cleaner. But when he saw that Jelif could not stand it and let go of the Esletian pirate, a mysterious force penetrated him again. The boy no longer heard bad whispers or words of doubt in his head, but a mysterious, loud voice. You have to believe, you must protect this world from the forces of darkness. You are one of the chosen, you are a warrior. David didn't know who the voice belonged to, but he already knew what to do, so he rose from the ground, taking the first step. As he felt his body become more and more light, he thought it was over, but his feet clung to the ground as if he weighed at least a ton. So he took the second step, and then the third, until he finally realized that nothing was threatening him. Mirentagan, seeing that the boy was beginning to walk more and more confidently towards him, went into a rage, after which he strained his mind more to stop him. David could clearly see that he was trying to extract even more power from himself, which cost him a lot of effort, but the mysterious vortex finally began to slowly approach them. The monsters behind the ruler retreated in fear. David, however, did not show the slightest expression of fear and went on, knowing that these magic tricks could not stop his faith. Do you think you'll make it, puppy? Do you think you're strong now? Well, not a snot. Ice and fire will consume all this earth, and your world will continue to plunge into darkness. No one will see this beautiful land again. I'll let you mourn everyone you love. Mirentagan began to yaw. You have nothing left to say to me, demon. You and your new order is coming to an end. You will pay me for taking away everything I loved. So far, all my life I have followed your voice, convinced that I am nobody. I've treated myself like garbage and have always agreed with your lies, but now it's time to turn my back on you. It's time to tell you, no, it's time for you to know what my anger is, what my world is, what my dreams are, what my strength is, what my freedom is, and my goal. When the boy said this, he pulled out his shining sword in front of him. Suddenly, a golden glow fired from it, which shielded them all from a huge vortex, even though no one but the two of them could see it. The frantic storm around stopped. Mirentagan began to shake with rage, then walked swiftly towards the small opponent, but after a while he realized that he could not break through the light around him, so all the arsonists attacked him, but the evil ruler gave the order to his subjects to attack as well. The horde of monsters pounced on the fugitives, but could not break through the golden glow, so the opponents after a while went outside the cover, starting to wreak havoc in their ranks. Mirentagan only began to scream in despair, but he was not just going to give up, so he decided that it was necessary to deprive the escapees of their last lifelines so that they could no longer escape. Destroy the boat, ordered the ruler. The goblins and the vermers, hearing the words of their lord, immediately grabbed their bows and crossbows. The arrows soared towards the boat over the heads of the arsonists, but some of the bolts that came from the opposite direction unfortunately crashed into the boat side, at Mettens' leg. which unfortunately was this healthy one. The bolt stuck into the side of his calf, and the leather shoe stopped the bolt a bit, but the pirate still had no chance to stay on his feet and fell screaming to the ground. No, the desperate comrades screamed, but suddenly behind them they heard another disturbing sound. They turned behind each other and saw that the ropes were breaking away from the moorings, and their sailboat was beginning to move away from the pier. Fast, to the boat, David cried out to his companions, trying to pick up the wounded Isletian. Tirefadin, seeing that the boy needed help, turned back to help him, and the others were already jumping on board. Harin, who jumped last, looked behind him to chase his comrades who were still in the harbor, but his speech was interrupted by an arrow flying by. Mirentagan, seeing the boat departing, was about to order his creatures to stop them, but after a while he realized that there was someone much more important on the shore, so he grabbed Nanthorin by the arm and put him on his knees so that they could see him. The other three fugitives stopped in an instant when they realized that they had forgotten about the light-eyed warrior. David and Tirefadin left Mettens to the ground, seeing the masked ruler holding the black-haired Hero-est in his hands. The 10 remaining runaways also realized that Nanthorin was not in the boat and remained with them on the pier. "Quick, jump!" Jullifessa called out, but from that distance she couldn't see anything. When she heard no reply, she spoke anxiously to the comrades next to her. "Grab the paddles, we have to come back for them." Bago, Harin, Pupin and Cordrin immediately grabbed the oars obediently, but after a while, they all froze motionlessly, seeing a mysterious fog begin to shroud on the pier, from which suddenly, after a while, fiery arrows emerged. Several flaming arrows hit the sail, setting it on fire in an instant. Bago grabbed the bucket lying next to him and filled it with water to snuff the fire, but as soon as he did so, the fire suddenly disappeared without a trace when the boat was suddenly struck by a monstrous bang that tilted it to the side and knocked them all off their feet, like a wave. Lying on the ground, Mettens raised his head to look the boy in the face. David's eyes also showed indescribable fear as he looked at the laughing Mirentagan and the golden-haired Pagurian, who dragged the thrown Tirefadin and placed him right next to the powerless Hero-est. After a while, both captured men knelt before his eyes, thrice of the grey fog surrounding them. Mirentagan continued to play with his dagger in his hand until he finally spoke to the stiffened boy. "How sad this sight is that right? Imagine that your friends must now suffer so badly because of you. They must suffer because you want to be powerful, and you have appeared in this world only to fulfill the whims of this useless fool," laughed the ruler, pointing casually at Nanthorin kneeling next to him. "This is not true," the boy shouts in a trembling voice. "Really? And didn't you notice that this little wanted to take advantage of you all the time? He's not as good as you think, Davy. He doesn't care about you, but only about what you have in you, for the blood of the great Hardrocks men flows in you, which would allow him to learn a mystery that is the power to create a new world anew. This mystery would allow him to explore the human inner life, make people long-lived through the blood of your ancestors and have the strength to lift your world from the ashes. Don't listen to his lies, David. These are his intentions. He wants to make people slaves without free will." And Nanthorin did not finish, when suddenly Mirentagan hit him in the face. The ruler spits on him, and then again turned to the boy. "Do you really believe him, Davy? Do you really think he took you here to become strong and know the truth about yourself? Well, no. Do you think this whole theater around you has any meaning? You must be a fool if you think that this whole world has anything to do with your strength. Well, tell me what you've learned here, that good always wins over evil, or rather, that evil wins over good." Mirentagan laughed, finally kicking the warrior in the face. "It's time to wake you up from that miserable dream, boy. This whole dream, this whole fairy tale taking place around you, has only made you sink into even more suffering. Did you want to find out the truth about yourself? You just got it. You are only human, ordinary, small, insignificant Kirian hound." Mirentagan paused for a moment, looking at the shaking boy. "And do you also want to know the truth about who all people are, Davy? I'll tell you the whole truth about them. They are sinners, ordinary, vacant, rotten creatures that allow themselves to be swept away and pushed about. The good becomes ridiculed. They themselves begin to believe that they are worthless garbage and teach others since childhood that they are just a coincidence, a pile of fossilized shit." When he said this, he trampled on the remains of a fossilized monster lying on the ground, making it clear to him think what he thought of humans. "People have long since given power to my lord, and now they wonder why there is no good in their world. They wanted to choose a ruler themselves, so they got one, and the Creator left them. Love does not exist. This fairy tale of human nature exists only in your mind, and the fact that I want to get rid of free will not change anything anyway, because people are devoted to my Lord with all their hearts anyway. Already today they carry out his every order and are ready to murder another only for the pieces of paper, or what people call pleasure. Everyone thinks only about himself. People wonder why they hate each other so much, but they themselves have divided into different races. Some consider themselves better, because they have a slightly nicer tip of their own nose. Mirentigan began to laugh. The best thing is that all these people consider themselves as free people. Free. They don't know what freedom is. It was taken away from them centuries ago. Some exalt themselves above others, wanting to be gods, and do everything to get rid of the worse ones, to have everything for yourself. However, when someone tells them directly, we are enslaved, others will answer that they are free, because they have everything that makes their lives easier. Even animals are more intelligent than these fools. They believe everything we tell them, even in the fact that they are nothing. They cannot use their eyes, ears, mouth or nose to know the truth, but only choose their mind, in which only evil dwells and nothing else. When Mirentigan had finally finished his terrible but partly true statement, David finally decided to speak. What you said about us humans is true, but I know very well that you and your Lord are behind all this, so tell me why you are doing this to us. Why? For what purpose? He began to cry. Because you are weak, you wanted it yourselves, and it is easier for you to achieve your idiotic goals. Mirentigan snorts contemptuously. Apparently you were created to love, but as I see it, your hearts were actually created to hatred and destruction, he added after a while, amused. Don't listen to him. The human has the task of loving, and only free will allows him to do so. True love can only exist because of it, for it is a choice between good and evil. If people had no choice, they could only do one of these things. Love must be chosen so that it can be real, not forced. Free will is a choice between good and evil, but evil seems more powerful because it does not work fairly. Your world is plunging into darkness not because the good does not exist, but because it is just and does not force anyone to do anything. The good is just free and not forced anyone. Even the greatest degenerate can become good again, until he has the gift of free will, began to call Nanthornin to the boy. Oh you, what wise words of a knight. The only question is whether you are at all as perfect as you think you are. Well, tell me, haven't you also sinned by accident? You probably remember that moment when you did not obey the Creator's command and came down to the earth, contributing to the human fall. Our supramundane race to this day has the power to rule the world alongside humans, and it is thanks to you, Mirentigan said, and then again turned to David. And do you, little boy, think that he is your friend, that his very beautiful words are sincere? Did he even give you his real name and tell you who he really is? Of course he didn't. So tell me, is it possible to trust someone like him? He asked. Certainly more than you, psycho. David burst out with a furious scream. And why? I can tell the truth too, and you know that truth can often be cruel. I've known you forever and I've never left you, so if you don't believe me I can tell you all about your miserable life, and maybe you will eventually find that there is no such thing as love, and that good is nothing but weakness. When the Dark Lord said this, suddenly David's head began to hurt him again, and disturbing whispers appeared in his mind again. He could hear the whisper words he had once spoken again. What can I say about your mother, Davy, for example? Let me think, said the man dressed in purple again. Suddenly, an image appeared in the boy's head, memories that David had always wanted to forget, even though he had hardly remembered them until now. He remembered a time when he was still young, exactly when he was 5 years old, and for the first time he saw the place where he had been raised for the rest of his life. He could remember clearly when he crossed the threshold of the orphanage and saw the face of his mother going away for the last time. He would cry out, "Mommy, Mommy, where are you going?" However, she, without looking back, left and never appeared with him again. He knew then that she had terrible problems, but he still loved her. Even when she happened to hit him or neglect him, he didn't think he would never see her again. Apparently, she could not get out of her addiction and she had to leave him, and apparently she did it of her own free will. Social Security only after this incident learned about the drug problems of the young woman. So what now, Davy? Do you still think that good wins? Your mother is a perfect example of how this is not the case. Drugs turned out to be more important to her than you. She probably snorted it in when she was pregnant as well, and surely that's why you're such a stupid little puppy now. You are so stupid that no one even wanted to clasp you and love you. Mirentagan did not finish, because suddenly the angry boy could not stand it and threw himself straight at his face. However, in an instant he threw him off and kicked him in the stomach. David cringed in pain, falling to the ground, began to squirm into a frenzy. "I hate you, monster, you possessed devil," he shouted, crying. "Oh." The poor baby is screaming, "You are as weak as any other human, and so stupid that you can't understand that you have no chance of winning with me." "Shut the fuck up," the boy suddenly shouted again, trying to reach him with his sword, but the great man would only step on his hands, preventing him from getting up from the ground. Nanthornin, seeing that David was still struggling furiously with his opponent, mumbled weakly, "David, anger won't help. You cannot give in to your anger only by force. You have to." The Pagunian slammed Heroest in the face, not letting him continue to speak. Mirentagan looked towards the Black Knight, and then at the tortured warrior. "I bet you're bored already, my friend. Wait a little longer, before we start doing our own thing. I have to say something else to Davy." When the ruler announced this, he turned again to the lying boy. "No, Davy, but everything I do is for your good. At first this slight-eyed impostor will die, then Direfadin, next will be your Asletian comrade next to you, and finally you will remain as last. I will finally wake you up from this idiotic dream. You will still thank me when you show up again at home and forget about this shining messenger and the rest of the show." When Mirentagan said this, he approached the kneeling warrior and unexpectedly stabbed him with his dagger, straight into his stomach. Nanthornin screamed in pain, feeling cold steel entering his abdominal muscles. A disgusting smile was carved on Mirentagan's mask, and he said after a while, "It's time to find out what's in your wretched heart, Malchidiel. I will tear your body apart slowly so that you can see what a long death is. Goodbye, you trash." Hearing this, Direfadin, kneeling next to him, immediately jumped off the ground to help the warrior, but the Pagunian suddenly threw his golden chain around the man's neck. "Not stupid yet, let's let everyone take a look," growled the ruler. "Tie them up quickly to this Waddenbork," he added after a while, amused. The Pagunian obediently obeyed the order and dragged the green-eyed man, tying him up like a dog on a chain. Chapter 45. David began to scream helplessly at the sight of a weapon delving into the heroist body. The Goldilocks fanatic, seeing that the boy tied to the log was trying to break the ropes, only began to laugh louder. "How sad it is when you see the death of your loved ones. It is a pity that no one can help you now, boy. It seems that even the rest of your comrades decided to sail away without you. Boo-ha-ha. Apparently they don't even care about you," he said. There were even more tears in the boy's eyes, and his scream became weaker and weaker with each passing moment. His bound hands and his entire torso prevented him from moving completely, and all he had to do was lift his gaze upwards so as not to look at the horrible sight in front of him. He looked towards the rising moon emerging from above the wall and the twinkling stars appearing one by one. Why do I have to be here? It's all my fault," he began to cry out to the sky. Hearing this, Mirentagan interrupted his brutal execution for a moment and he smiled clearly. Yes, finally, you begin to understand everything, Davy. It is because of you that this whole world will fall into ruin, and all your friends will perish." He laughed, but after a while he fell silent again, hearing the boy again begin to call something towards the stars. "Why am I here? For what purpose? God, if you exist, tell me why I have to suffer so much now. I want to know why I'm here. I ask why the heaven I'm here. I don't want to. It can't end like this, please." Hearing this, Mirentagan began to laugh even more, but when David stopped screaming, the boy suddenly saw that one of the stars in the sky was beginning to grow. Suddenly, he heard a hushed, gentle voice echoing strangely all around him. At first, the boy thought that it was the voice of Direfadin tied to him on the opposite side, but after a while he realized that no one but him could hear this mysterious voice. "David, you cannot give in to your anger. It is your debilitating weakness. You must use the power in your heart to transform your anger into a real force. Human must fight evil, but the strength of his hands will not help him. You must believe first." The mysterious voice suddenly intensified, but the boy had the impression that it was coming right next to him, so he turned around surprised, and a short man appeared before his eyes, with dark curly hair and a short beard. However, it had a golden sheen, which made the hair resemble a lion's mane. Surprisingly, this red-skinned, quite muscular man wore an ordinary, fastened shirt and blue jeans, which made this man look like the most ordinary person in the world. But when David looked into his eyes, he decided that he could not be ordinary. At first glance, an inconspicuous, short-on-looks man with an oblong nose, but shining with a starry glow, hid something indescribably beautiful. David also stated that no one but him apparently saw the man, and that something in the depths of his eyes made him less and less doubtful about who this character might be. Everything around them stood motionless, as if only he and David were the only living beings, but there was still a little of doubt in the boy's head, so he asked him after a while, terrified, "Who are you?" The man answered nothing and bestowed on him only a radiant smile, approaching the bound David, saying, "Remember, David, that good in all is not weakness, but victory. Evil has lost from the very beginning because it does not work fairly. Almost everything that is called weakness today is good. People are ashamed of their tears, but they do not notice that some of tears are good and without them they are weak, because they do not show what they care about. They have nothing to fight for. You can't believe when you have nothing to believe in, so believe in love, your goal, and above all yourself. Do not be ashamed of your tears now. Everyone is supposed to know what you care about. Believe and shout words of hope, not anger. Show your anger to evil better through your hope, which people today call weakness, and do not trust the anger itself that comes from the evil one. Use its power to stop it. Turn evil into good, David. Stop listening to the voice of your doubt and turn away your doubt so that it rises against your enemies, for you have free will, a choice between evil and good that you have to control. Put death to death and revive life. You must turn your weakness against evil, not against yourself. If evil itself wants to deceive and kill you, you cannot give in to evil, but become evil for evil. Your real enemies must fall in this fight, and your friends must survive. The man finally interrupted his long speech, and then looked the boy in the eyes, smiling again. Do not be afraid. You are a human being and you will decide about your dreams today. You will also decide whether to use evil or good, because you are a free man and you have a choice. Remember, however, that evil can only be stopped by good, but something good can also arise from evil if one only believes it. Darkness wants to get rid of the gift of free will, and man will then know neither good nor evil. Man will then only submit to the power over which he was to control, and this power is called nothing but sin, for it is nothing but a reversal from oneself and one's destiny, a reversal from its power over the world, which humanity has already given to the deceiver. Evil is evil, but love can convert it. Remember this. Do not be afraid of the darkness itself, but of what is hidden in it. Do not kill the killers, but killing. Anger toward others is evil, but anger against anger can do good. Evil cannot exist without good, and good cannot exist without evil, for man would not then be free, and his power over evil and good could not exist. So use your weakness of anger and your strength of believing in the good to turn that anger against the forces of darkness. So stand up and don't listen to the lies that you're weak. You are a warrior after all. Killing is evil, so for this you must use a blade that will not harm what is visible, but what is invisible. Do not kill what is evil, but evil itself, so that what is evil may become good again. David, hearing these words of encouragement, immediately stopped thinking of his anger. He decided that it would be right to use his faith on the dark ruler, removing the anger from himself to transform the evil that was harmful to him and give it to the owner. The man, seeing that the boy already understood that anger would not help him, said to him, "You already understand everything, David. You must get rid of the evil that destroys you by using good, which will become good for evil ones and evil for evil. The point here is not that evil is good, but that the servants of darkness have turned evil against man so that he may sin and be doubted. Evil existed from the very beginning, but it was man who had the power to leave it alone or to set it free, so make you regain your power over yourself, and not surrender to your authority." When the Creator finally finished his speech, he touched the boy's arm, and with tears in his eyes and a smile on his face, he said goodbye. "I'm not crying now for me to leave you, because I'll always be with you and been with you. You have not seen me so far just because your power has been taken away and you have seen nothing but only your pain. But now I tell you in truth, you must save this world. Do not give in to lies anymore and trust the truth that will guide you. You must reclaim this world because it belongs to you as well as to all people." Saying this, the man suddenly blurred in the air, but the star in the sky flashed even more brightly. Everything around him came alive again, time began to flow again, So David looked again at Mirantagun, who was slowly tearing the skin of Nanthorn and screaming in pain. He no longer remembered his weakness, but he remembered the strength that evil called weakness. He remembered all that was good and finally understood that evil is evil, so you have to put it in its place, to allow it to exist, but to turn it into good. Are you still so laughable, amused demon? The boy finally shouted in the direction of his eternal tormentor. Mirantagun, surprised, turned towards him and looked into his face. You will pay for wanting to get rid of free will, using the darkness against us, and for what you want to do to my beloved ones, he cried out with tears in his eyes. This time, however, it was not tears of despair, but of hope. Mirantagun and Pagurian burst out laughing when they heard the boy's words. Beloved, what a funny term, Davy. You're really funny, snorted Mirantagun. No, they are all truly my beloved ones. And what about you? You are the son of evil, so for this I will repay you with evil, which you turn against yourself. Every human being, even the worst one, deserves love. Everyone has sinned, and it is because of you. David replied. Ah, yes, then tell me, does this man also deserve love? I guess you won't say you would have mercy on him, snorted the Dark Ruler, suddenly grabbing unexpectedly the Pagurian standing next to him. He's your slave. You have taken away his free will and you are using your devilish tricks to carry out him for your orders, said the boy. So this is proof that human is weak, that he should be subject to us. No, men are not weak, they only believe that he is weak, because you lie to them. It is true that people have given power to your lord, but we still have free will and we have the power to say no to him. Oh, how terrifying. But it just so happens that from what I remember, you have already told me something like this, and yet you doubted. You people are really pathetic. You cannot hold on to the truth, and even so you choose us. You are weak, no monster. Weakness is the evil that you have separated from love in order to deprive men of his free will. Evil and good are a choice, but you have told us that it is worth following only evil, saying that you have the power to give people solace from the dazzling light that is truth. Yes. The truth is often dazzling for eyes, and for this reason people only believe what they want to believe, and you and your Lord hold people in the belief that when they can believe what they want, they can be free. The problem is that they, like me, have believed you so far because we wanted to take a break from the dazzling light and you gave us a kind of good antidote, which is really nothing but a lie itself, a lie that made human faithful to the darkness and gave his power to evil, over which he was to have power. He had the choice to release it or leave it to the owner. And for that reason I renounce it and make it come back to your lying mouth. I will destroy you with your own mistakes. I will reverse all your anger used against me and I will destroy you with your own anger, not mine, for it does not come from me. It doesn't come from you, you say. In that case, who wants to murder me today? Laughed the evil ruler. You know very well who. You will now regret lying to me. You've just made the biggest mistake of your life, shouted the boy. What kind of mistake? When, snorted the monster. When you decided to make me a monster, David replied, and as if nothing had happened, he tore the ropes on his hands, and with a cry of triumph, he tore apart the rest of the ropes that bounded him. If you really wanted to destroy me, regret it, for it is now I who will destroy you, devil. You have destroyed yourself. The boy howled again, and then ran towards his executioner. Stop him, ordered Mirantagun to the Pagurian soldier in a trembling voice. So the Goldilocks man threw the spear at David, but the boy bounced it off with his hand, and then threaved it towards Mirantagun. The enraged ruler, seeing the blade stuck in his chest, went into an even greater frenzy. If you really consider yourself as a hero, prove your power to me now, he yelled. It's not about power, it's about what I believe in, David replied. Ah, yes, so in what do you believe, stupid puppy? I believe in the truth, said the boy, then ran to him. Grabbing his sword, Mirantagun used his power to send dark bullets toward him, but David continued running forward without the slightest expression of fear, and all the dark balls turned back, transforming into luminous arrows. All of them pierced into the body of the ruler, squealing and gently, throwing him backwards. If you really want to stop me, Mirantagun said, you'll do it at another time. He finished, and then raised his hand to put his purple robe on himself. David, however, had no intention of giving up and ran to his cowardly opponent to snatch the magical array from his hands. Mirantagun laughed suddenly, however, and then with his other hand he swung at the other escapees on the pier. When he did this, some enormous power moved the whole structure, which after a while fell into the water, along with the bound people. After a while, Mettens and Tirefadin plunged into the water, unable to get out through the ropes that bound them. "This time you will not help your comrades," the masked ruler burst out laughing, throwing his purple robe on both of them. David didn't even have time to scream when suddenly a mysterious cloth covered his entire body. "David!" Nanthonin cried out weakly, but it was too late. The boy and his enemy disappeared after a while without a trace, and the robe fell to the ground, turning into dust and smoke. The warrior, already knowing that he could not help the boy, looked towards the drowning comrades. "You must succeed, David. You have to stop him. I will save your friends," he whispered as if to himself, then grabbed the stiffened Pagurian standing next to him by the leg and with a cry of pain managed to push him into the water. As soon as he did so, he grabbed his stomach, feeling blood oozing profusely from the wound. His entire skin, from his abdomen to his chest itself, stretched along a red line, and every slightest movement caused terrible pain. Eventually, however, he managed to rise from the ground, leaning against the sword lying next to him. Jalifessa suddenly woke up in a drifting boat and got up after a while, grabbing her sore forehead. "Is everyone fine?" she asked. Bago, leaning across the mast next to her, groaned only in response, and Popin said, "I don't think everyone is fine. I mean, only we are fine. We have to turn back." They stayed there. Cordrin cried out immediately after him, "But he's there, he is still there," Turhin said, but no one paid attention to him. "The fog is gone, there are no monsters," the princess noted. The others looked around and didn't actually see anyone. "We have a broken mast and we don't have paddles, we will not get there." The girl did not finish, because suddenly, to her horror, she saw a collapsed pier, on which they had recently seen their other companions. No one was there now. When she found that they were still not visible, she jumped, plunged unexpectedly into the water. "Nanthonin!" She began to cry out in a trembling voice, swimming in cold water. The moon shining upwards only illuminated the nearest area, and the silence around them only aroused in all of them more and more fear. Bago jumped into the icy water, following by Popin along with Cordrin, Turhin and Celian. "Grab a rope!" Jelif, standing on the deck, cried, throwing them a long rope into the water. After a while, they began to swim, pulling the boat towards the collapsed pier. The deep, night-soaked water did not even allow them to see what was below the surface, so all they had left was to sail on, calling out their comrades. "Nanti, wheelio you?" Bago cried. There was still no answer, only a terrifying silence. Finally, Jalifessa was the first to reach the harbor and jumped on the drifting boards to climb the collapsed pier. When she climbed on it, only emptiness appeared to her eyes again, but after a while Bago cried something vaguely, throwing himself crying on the ground. The princess, seeing the mudman's behavior, also looked at the ground, at the place where the muddy was looking, and to her eyes appeared a black warrior's shirt lying on the ground, and a stain of fresh blood, trickling into the water. When the others also arrived at the place and saw this terrifying sight, they also froze in silence. Jelif also jumped out of the boat and saw this horrible image, but she noticed that the trail of blood was continuing towards the water, so she showed it to her princess, and after a while the girl stood up surprised, finding that a trace of blood indicated that Hero-Est could have escaped into the water. Consolation by this fact, she again began to cry out. "Nanthonin, Tirefadin, David, are you here?" The others, seeing her raising from the ground, also stood up and started screaming in the hope that someone would soon answer them. I'm here now, we are fine," suddenly a familiar voice said, a voice that all of them were waiting for. Tears of happiness appeared in the eyes of all of them, and then they looked behind them, towards the boat. Nanthonin emerged from under the drifting boards and groaned, leaning against the deck, holding in his hands 2 coughing men. "You are alive." Bago was pleased, but when he noticed what a terrible state the warrior was in, the smile involuntarily came off his face. The half-naked man had on his body gashed skin on his chest and fingers, from which a stream of blood was still flowing, staining all 3 of them. The comrades who saw this, immediately jumped from their place, helping them to climb the pier. Mettens and Tirefadin lay without strength on the demolished structure, shaking from the terrible cold. "And where is David?" Popin finally asked, when the light-eyed man finally fell to the ground as the last. Chapter 46. The boy opened his eyes. Around him was the emptiness itself and the glaring whiteness. After a while he got up on his feet and looked around, unable to see anything. The full silence was so piercing that when he began to breathe, He had the impression that he could hear Fenry panting. Every sound he heard echoed loudly, or rather something he couldn't even describe. "David, come to me," suddenly a mysterious voice said. Oddly enough, it was not a male voice belonging to Mirentigan or Nanthornian, but a female one. Unlike his voice, it was very quiet and gentle in this strange place. The boy looked around again, frightened to the sides, grabbing the hilt of the sword. After a while, from the white light, or more precisely the white emptiness, and strange, female figure emerged. David looked at her, and when he did, it literally took his breath away, and he would stand stiffly, staring at the light around her. All the colors of the rainbow shimmered with a wonderful glow, illuminating her wreath, or rather the crown, intertwined with white roses. The beautiful lady was dressed in scarlet and purple, and various jewels hung around her neck. The face was as pale as snow, and the hair that reached to the very ground was as black as the night sky, and it shone like the surrounding it stars. But her eyes seemed to be the most beautiful thing the boy had ever seen in his entire life, because he didn't even know how to describe it. This eye color was simply out of this world, for the boy had never seen anything more wonderful, incomprehensible and touching before. David finally moved, hid his sword in his sheath, and then, without the slightest expression of fear, walked slowly to the beautiful figure. As he approached, he saw that she was holding two things in her hands. On the left she held a white as snow, a large rose, and on the right, she had a golden, large chalice, decorated with rubies and diamonds. David, however, could not see what was inside the vessel, because the mysterious woman held the chalice and the rose high, and she herself was almost twice as tall as him. The beautiful lady finally spoke again. "How good it is that you are here, David. I have always wanted to reveal myself to you, but a certain terrible power has prevented me from getting to you. Apparently, an evil spirit has kidnapped you here. Do you know where he might be now?" she asked at the end, looking nervously behind the boy's back. Her voice was gentle and melodic, but her last words sounded visibly restless. "An evil spirit, you mean, in the mean of Mirentigan?" David began to ask, frightened, slowly remembering everything. "Oh, that's what this terrible villain is all about. He certainly wanted to kill you, but I will not let you get into his hands, my dear. In my light, you will be safe," answered the woman, then gave him her rose and grabbed his hand. "Follow me, youthful. I will take you to the edge of my world and show you everything I have wanted to reveal to you for years. Finally, the opportunity came up to show you everything I wanted. You will finally learn what your destiny is, David. The unknown world you have come to has certainly already presented you with a lot about who you are. Now I am taking you here to present you with a further fate, to assist your next mission, and in time, when you will return, I will finally let you go home, but remember to listen to my request, because when you return, it will be not the end of your tasks that I have entrusted to you." "You mean, oh beautiful lady, I mean, forgive me, does that mean you created this whole world? Who are you, if I can ask?" I am sorry, but I've never met you before," David replied, embarrassed. Hearing this, the woman gave him a sweet smile. "Oh David, Nanthornin brought you here, and I wanted to show myself to you only now, because your journey is coming to an end. I have sent to you my servant Malchadiel, or rather Nanthornin, who was to teach you everything here, and I will complete your entire journey. Forgive me, dear lady, I'm really sorry, but I really don't know you too much, unfortunately, lady, or maybe, I mean, what is your name if I can ask your beauty?" The boy stuttered. "Oh, I apologize for my manners. How could I not introduce myself to you yet? My name is Ashbet, Lady of Love, Fidelity and War. I am a morning star. You can find me in the night sky. Every night I watch over you in a dream, and it was I who decided to take you into the world of imagination so that you could find your purpose. I know your whole story, and my heart bled every time you suffered and asked for help. In the end, however, the Creator heard your prayers and allowed me to send Nanthornin to you to become strong and courageous here, for I want to use the strength you have gained in this world so that you can create a wonderful, divine work in your own world. You have learned the strength and knowledge that will allow us to create a new, better world, without suffering, crying and weakness." David, who heard this, smiled at her, but her last words sounded a little familiar. Someone had said something similar before. After a while, they too finally stopped over some bright space. David approached the edge. Looking down, he could see nothing there, but after a while the beautiful lady raised her hand upwards, and all the light blurred without a trace, revealing the whole view rolling before them. David, to his amazement, saw a big city, a strangely familiar, modern city. Yes, he was not wrong, it was the capital of his country, where he lived. From above it was possible to see familiar places such as trees, skyscrapers, tenement houses or roads. Now you will be able to see the further fate of your world. You will have the opportunity to change your world with us, so I want to present to you our divine work that we will do in the near future, the woman said, and then pointed him to the city, giving him a sign to look. Suddenly, some strange objects appeared before his eyes, coming from above. After a while, it all stopped, emerging from the clouds, and it hovered over the entire city, like huge steel spaceships, resembling the shape of raised rockets, but it were all made of steel or something like that, and it floated with the help of several huge engines placed in the bottom. Strange objects made an unpleasant roar, and the fire coming from the engines would easily burn everything down, if only the vehicle had descended more. After a while, David heard the screams of terrified people. He didn't know what it was all about. Wait. What is it supposed to be? What the hell is that? What do you want to show me by that? The boy began to worry, questioning the smiling woman. She turned towards him, laughing. Oh, you goofball, nothing like that happens. Purification is coming, a new better world. You will have the opportunity to participate in this work. A new order will finally come. How's that? What are you talking about? This is not what. David did not finish, because suddenly he heard a terrible sound like a thunder. He turned back towards the city in terror and saw something that had frozen his blood in his veins. All the levitating objects above began to send fiery projectiles towards his city, which in one moment left behind the only rubble itself. Isn't that wonderful, David? Imagine now that soon all these sinners will perish in this fire. The real fires of hell will engulf them all, and we will be able to lay together new foundations for a better world on these rubble. Together we can create a paradise without suffering, tears and pain. The new order will fulfill whatever you want. This sinful humanity will die out, but you, along with a trickle of other survivors, will be able to create a better world anew. Hearing this, David began to shiver all over his body. Why? Why will these people die? He cried as he looked again at the horrible image at the bottom. The entire sky above was covered with black clouds. Lightning bolts and tornadoes started to destroy remains that remained from the city. Know, David, that these people don't have to die, but it's too late. People lack repentance. Humanity in a dozen or so years will destroy itself anyway. People are digging their own graves, and instead of uniting to fix the world, they will only destroy it more and more consciously, or unconsciously. The raw materials will run out, even though people are stupid enough not to understand it, and then the earth will give birth again only to thorns and dust. It will be the same as in the days of your great ancestors. People will have nothing to eat and will murder each other for a crumb of bread while the laws of this world continue to tell them about a better world. Everyone will turn into monsters and die out, but you can survive, for the blood of kings and great warriors who were able to rise from such ashes flows within your veins. You are the same as your ancestor Japheth, a descendant of Lamech, the father of Magog, and it is people like you who can survive and renew the world after the fall, for you have come to know the knowledge and power not of this world, which will allow me to give you. The beautiful apparition did not finish the sentence, because David suddenly began to scream. No, I don't want to. Why do you say that? It's not all good. The woman smiled at him. Of course it is not good, David, but the prophecy cannot be broken. Humanity will die out because people and God himself want it. No. Neither men nor God want it, only your new order wants it, the boy replied. Of course it is, David. That's what it's all about. After all, even the people themselves belong to this order, so they are the ones who want it. Don't you understand that? Do you think that only the forces of darkness are responsible for all the evil in the world? Well, no. Cain's descendants have long since died out, but the knowledge that was given to him has survived to this day. The descendants of Gog and Magog have been trying to renew the original kingdom for centuries. This image you see at the bottom is nothing but a human creation. Human technology has made it possible to create an ordinary theater from the earth. Diseases, cataclysms, and even the weather itself became subordinate to humans. A cult that is supposed to gain power over the world and get rid of inferior, meaningless subjects. All nations are facing each other instead of fighting their real enemy. When the woman said this, she pointed out the cloudy sky to the boy. Do you still think there's a loving God up there? Well, no. The Creator has left you, and the only thing you can find there, among these beautiful clouds, is hell. You have given this whole world to my Lord." Hearing this, David immediately saw who he was really dealing with, so he grabbed his weapon and, with a cry of rage, stabbed Mirentagun right in the chest. "Do you really think it's going to help? And so I know that you're still hunger my voice. You are just like me and you also want to control this world like any other human being. Everyone wants to be God. Be silent, you lying devil. You wanted to deceive me and then kill me," shouted the boy, pulling out his blade from the body of the monster. The whole dress was flooded with tar-black blood after a while, but a wonderful smile was again painted on Demon's face. "So you'll rather still be a meaningless Kyrian hound? Yes, still don't want to join our cult? You could then gain power over the whole world. You would become God. You would even have the power to create another great war, waging the whole world, or kill all your enemies. You would be like the great kings of your earth. You would have the power to control the human mind and heart." When Mirentagun said this, the boy's head suddenly being penetrated by indescribable pain. He began to literally scream with tearing pain, as if something had torn apart the inside of his skull. "You're still just telling lies to me, you demon," the boy finally managed to mumble, "and I will never join your order. I know that it wants to destroy me, and you've always wanted to get me," he added. "Not really, David. I wanted to get your mind, your dreams and imagination, and as you can see now, I succeeded." When the monster said this, the boy's head began to hurt less, but suddenly an image appeared in his head. He saw his mother again, but this time he did not know from where the memory came from. After a while, however, he noticed that he saw himself being held as a toddler by her on her hands. Suddenly, the picture blurred without a trace and another one appeared. He saw a tiny baby lying on some strange metal table, and after a while a mysterious, masked man appeared next to him with a syringe in his hand. David, of course, did not remember such memories, because he was too small at the time, but he already knew that it had to be him. The baby began to cry as a needle stuck straight into his small forehead. "You are the first man in thousands of years to discover the blood of the originals in your blood. Your genes turned out to be more similar to those of the original ones, instead of those of your biological parents. Your blood is able to recreate a race we never dreamed of, giants who will rebel against the Creator, just as they used to. The mark will allow me to get to the memories of all your ancestors to learn how to stop your resistance. The Titans will never again triumph over the Nephilims and Powers." "What resistance? What Titans?" The boy was surprised. "All your ancestors, except for one person, sacrificed their lives in the fight against our cult, but it's time to end it, so let me kill you quickly." And Mirentagun did not finish, because suddenly the blade of the great sword was again stuck in his chest. "So you really repay me for my help in that way. I will only allow you to return to your longed-for home, so that you forget all that you have experienced here, that you may return to your old life, which brought you closer to my Lord. May you remain that insignificant garbage that serves our new order. Think carefully, David. You won't win with us, so give up now and I'll do it quickly and painlessly. You won't lose anything. I can give you one last chance to make the right decision." "The right decision? You earn the right. I will never hear any of your words again, monster. Never. I'm going to murder you, beast," David shouted, then attacked the apparition again. The monster yelled in anger, after which it began to cry. "So you're choosing hatred again, Davy? After all, I have given you everything you have. I gave you love and I wanted to free you from your free will, and you repay me so much bad, after all that I have done for you, so you're going to pay me for it, you foolish boy. Now you are facing severe punishment for how you have hurt my bleeding heart. You could have been strong and powerful, gaining power over the world, but you abandoned me and insulted my words. I thought maybe you could be convinced, but no. Now that's the end, Davy. It's time for you to finally know my true incarnation." The apparition howled, and then tilted its golden cup. After a while, various disgusting vermin began to crawl out of it, which fell to the ground and began to creep towards the terrified boy. Black, dirty, thick worms made thin squeaks and other disgusting noises. When all these abominations came out, Mirentagun lowered the cup, after which his woman's hands turned into big paws. Big claws stuck into the white dress and tore all the clothes. When the monster did it, he broke into small pieces that scattered on the ground. A moment later, only a pile of fidgeting bugs remained of the apparition, from which a figure began to materialize. Now David did not see before him a beautiful woman or a masked man dressed in purple, but a disgusting, great creature, with great claws and wings. The head resembled a reptilian snout with a split tongue and tar-black eyes. The 7 horns resembled a large crown, above which there was an impenetrable darkness around. From the great throat and nostrils came purple smoke. You will soon see for yourself what death means. The beast howled, suddenly throwing itself at David. The boy did not even have time to twitch when he was suddenly knocked down by a large body and began to fall into a great abyss, in which the image of the burning city was still visible. Despite this, the boy began to fight with his opponent, falling at an increasing speed. Mirandakan tried to tear the boy apart with his big claws, but the boy pushed him away in flight, so the beast struck after a while against the wall next to him, raising up a cloud of dust. Suddenly, however, the wall disappeared without a trace, and David noticed that the place from which they had fallen was slowly disappearing. After a while, he slammed his back against some blue mirror-like envelope and he found that everything he saw looked more real than he thought. After a while, he landed on the roof of one of the demolished cars, but oddly enough, nothing happened to him after falling from such a high height. Even though everything around him seemed real, he felt as if he was in some other reality, outside of his body. The boy finally jumped off the dented roof onto the cracked street, and while he did it, Mirandakan suddenly crashed into the asphalt, who got up as soon as possible and attacked the stunned boy again. David no longer knew what was going on around him. His opponent snatched a street lamp from the ground after a while, and then swung it at the screaming boy. I see that you still have a lot to learn, Davy. You can't even see the difference between illusion and reality. Do you think that all your life you only see what you want? Well, no. I am the lord of your mind and I will destroy you. This whole fairy tale is under my control. The beast howled, then picked up the bus standing next to him from the ground and slung it towards the boy. However, the latter immediately guessed what the monster meant and decided to change it. So when the vehicle was about to crush him, David pulled his sword in front of him and cut the vehicle in half. When the 2 halves of the bus fell to the ground, it turned into dust and disappeared without a trace. Seeing this, Mirandakan was visibly disturbed, and then turned his black eyes toward the human. You may have access to my mind, but you will never take it away from me. I will never give you a single piece of myself again and I will not let you take away my free will. Until I am free, I have the power to stop you, the boy cried. Oh really? Mirandakan asked contemptuously, stretching out his enormous paw in front of him. David, suddenly pushed away by his power, literally fired backwards, hitting one of the walls of the collapsed building. Mirandakan approached the rubble-covered boy and grabbed him by the neck, lifting him from the ground. None of you are free. You are subject to us from the very beginning, as well as all of creation. You were gods. You were surrounded by an aura and you walked with the Creator, but you decided to turn away from the light, and then we looked down on your wretched world and your weak hearts, which could not even resist us, and your friend Maljadil. Do you think he's as good as your whole Creator? He is not better than me. He came upon your world and contributed to your downfall, giving rise here to our great civilization. People have never been free from us, for we and our wonderful order are everywhere. People themselves decided to turn away from creation and join the kingdom of darkness, the kingdom of this world. Listening to all this, David began to shake, unable to mutter a single word out of himself through his clenched throat. Do you think that this world can still be saved? My lord will not allow you to do this, because you too belong to his kingdom. You, too, will lose your free will and become another monster subordinate to us, because you belong to him. No human Kirianhan will be able to stand up to us. Never. When Mirandakan stopped screaming, he threw him to the ground and then asked, So you have anything else to tell me, little puppy? Yes, monster. I will never belong to you. Because of you I have lost all that is good, but this is the end. I will not allow you to destroy me and my friends now. I will not let you give my story. David shouted furiously into the demon's face. So you still think I'm responsible for all your suffering? After all, I do not have the power to get to every man. They themselves allow us to do this, and your mother abandoned you not because of me, but of her own free will. I didn't force her to do anything. Mirandakan laughed. I'm sick of your lying language. You forced her to do it. You whispered in her ear as much as you did me. The boy was enraged. Of course it does. But she could have chosen a different way. After all, this is what free will is all about. She didn't have to listen to me at all, but the drugs were apparently more important than her own child, and she left you for that. Apparently, She was fed up with such a rampant brat, and she was smoking it for her own good, for sure. When she wanted to finish with herself and pulled all those pills into herself, she wanted to kill you too. Maybe for this reason you're still so stupid, because to this day I can feel the effects of all the filth shit that your mama gave you then. The Rentagon did not finish the sentence, because David, unable to withstand it anymore, threw himself upon his reptilian muzzle. You're really pathetic, the beast gasped out, grabbing the angry boy by the hood. And where has your strength gone again? You're just only garbage again, and that's all? You are really very funny. Shut up. A teenager growled, trying to kick the creature straight into the muzzle. This is the end, Davy. It's time to say goodbye to all this show and return to reality. Return to your smelly bed and your former pitiful life. You will forget all those you'd have met here, and I will finish my work and consume this world in fire and ice. Your world will continue to sink in its sinful conduct, and all creation will die out, just as it once did. Again we will hear in the top lament and weeping of the sons of God, and the cry of all human vermin, the screams of all living creatures, yours too, he shouted, then stuck his claws straight into the boy's chest. David looked in horror at the blood dripping down from his sweatshirt. I promised you a quick death, so I will keep my word. So I'm going to tear your heart apart and see if there's still a soul there that can be freed from this nasty body. No, the boy howled weakly, frightened. No. So I have to leave your miserable body alone and take care of your interior first, so let it be. The Rentagon laughed, then opened his smelly throat. Suddenly, the boy felt his whole life begin to come out of him, how his tormentor slowly draws his mind into himself. It's time to wake up. Your vivid imagination only limits you. The monster hissed at the end, goggled his black eyes. The boy had get enough. He preferred to surrender to his strength rather than suffer, but suddenly behind the back of the monster, he saw a figure out of the corner of his eye. As the mysterious man approached, he immediately remembered who he was. A man in a white shirt, surrounded by a bright glow, turned his starry eyes toward the boy. David, you can't give up. You are our last hope, cried the creator. The boy could not answer him, but somehow, the man already knew what he wanted to tell him. No, David, I am always with you and I will always help you, but only if you allow it. So do not give up and believe in the truth that life gives. I can give you this life, for I am the truth. You are human, a being who has the task of loving and fighting for what is good. You are the guardian and protector of your world, so you cannot allow evil to gain your property. Hearing this, however, David still could not do anything. He wanted to say help me, but he was too weak. Do not be afraid, David. I'm not going to let you go now. You must finish your work. This is the task entrusted to you people, but know that I will always be with you. It is people who have brought demons into the world and only they can stop them, but the power of ordinary hands is not enough for them, so believe in life to defeat death. When the figure said this, he suddenly moved away a few steps, and then blurred as before, without a trace. David, on the other hand, could do nothing more. Everything began to disappear slowly before his eyes, until suddenly he felt that he was beginning to go beyond his body. Finally, there was a clear silence and emptiness all around, nothing but impenetrable darkness. Believe in life, said a quiet voice again, coming from a distance. The boy closed his eyes, but when he did so, he did not saw darkness, but his own body, a body that was moving further and further away from him himself.